All right, welcome to part 2 of the Keep Your Torch Lit Season 3 finale. In this episode, we will be interviewing Dylan and Deven, so let's bring them on right now. So yeah, welcome Dylan and Deven. So great to see the two of you. We finally have reunited the two finalists from Season 3.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be on.
Awesome. Yeah, so great to hear from you guys. So, I want to hear from both of you. What's been going on with you guys' lives since Season 3 filmed, and it's been a few years since that now. So, yeah, what's been going on with you guys?
So that was my junior year fall when the whole season happened, and since then, junior year, like second semester, I was abroad in Barcelona. So that was like an amazing experience. I traveled to like a few countries in Europe, as well as Morocco and Africa. I highly recommend going abroad for anyone that's even like on the border of like going, because like I was like thinking about not going, but then I was just like, okay, let me just like try it out and kind of go out of my comfort zone. And it was like the best time of college. Made a lot of friends, and like it was just like an amazing time. And then it was my senior year. I came back and took it pretty easy senior year, and had the whole COVID thing come in second semester, so that kind of ruined graduation plans in the last few months. But ever since, I've been home in Southern California, just working now, but before just kind of enjoying the weather and trying to be outside as much as possible.
Nice.
Do you want me to go now?
Yeah, sure. Go.
Wait, Devin. Did we talk about Barcelona at all before? Because I went last year.
Yeah, I think I told you that you should go, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
I don't think. Yeah, I
how
don't
was
think
your
we talked
experience?
after that. Yeah. I mean, similar to yours, it was. I was juggling kind of the same thing. I had only been to Canada out of the country before, and so going to Spain was a completely new experience. I'm not fluent in Spanish either, so trying to like gain some sort of like cultural understanding and language understanding while I was there was interesting. And I don't know if you can speak to any of this, but I found that one of the best ways to practice Spanish and learn more Spanish was in cab rides, going out at night, or coming back home, or going to dinner or something, because especially if you've been coming back from the clubs, you're a lot more inclined to speak and like get out of your comfort zone when talking to the cab drivers. And they thought it was hilarious. At least most of them. Some of them were like, stupid Americans, like, stop trying to talk in Spanish to me.
Yeah.
But a lot of them were like trying to teach me new words and like be like, no, you're supposed to say it like this with like this inflection, whatever. But yeah, I thought that was really funny, and the food over there was really good. And I met a lot of locals through the college that I was attending there. And
What college did you go to?
it was Asade Business School.
Oh, I did the same. That's crazy.
I don't know how we
That's
haven't
dope.
talked about this then.
Yeah. There were only like probably like 5 or 6 or maybe like 10 of you guys from Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had like, yeah, that's crazy. Wow. What? We had, yeah, I want to say like 10 of us were there. What did you think about it? What did you think about that school?
I thought Asade was well, so it's like an international school, so like 50%
Right, yeah.
of the school is like are people from like random, like just a bunch of different countries.
Yep.
And then 50% of them are local.
Mm-hmm.
I felt as if the locals, like a lot of them knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so like kind of like stuck together, but I like the people from other countries were very like were very interested in like getting to know us from the United States, and even if we were just there for like a few months, we like hung out a lot. So that was a really good experience. The school is like an hour train ride outside of like the heart of Barcelona,
Yep.
in like a city called Sant Cugat, and it was just interesting kind of seeing like the like kind of like just like general like towns outside of Barcelona, and like see how like people lived. And you know, you don't see like people like parents walking their kids to like school,
Yeah.
because there was like a local like elementary school by the business
Yeah,
school,
dude.
and like stuff like that
That's
was
so
like
funny.
cool to witness. But it was definitely a good experience. Like I would highly recommend the school to anyone.
Yeah. I'll reiterate the same thing. And my personal experience with the internationals were the Norwegians were the most like friendly and like out there, and like went out of their way to like invite us to go do stuff. And they were also like very great partiers. They loved their beer, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know. So yeah, that's sweet. We should definitely talk more about that in the future. I didn't even know you went to that same business school.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love how we kept seeing like you guys. I mean, because Devin, you were in with the same program and like in Ross, you're just like a year ahead of Dylan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, all of you guys just had like these same college experiences, but just like staggered by a year. Like,
Well, and then like Dylan was like partially in like my fraternity at some point, and like that was like another like small little
Oh my
common
gosh.
like similarity, which is just like multiple things that kind of overlap, which is really interesting.
Yeah, we found that out afterwards.
Do you think that's why you guys started?
Sorry, what?
Sorry. Do you guys think that's why you guys started to work together? Like,
we kind of like
you just had a lot in common.
I remember, I think, when I first started like noticing like Devin has like he's very personable was the Rock Tribal where Andrew went out, and a lot of it was like the girls were beefing in front of us and the guys were kind of in the back row. And like I remember like me and Brady were looking over at like Andrew and Devin, and they were just like laughing like about like everything that was going on in front of us and like how it escalated and so quickly, and we thought it was just funny. And I remember looking over at Devin, and we were just like laughing to each other. And then the Eliza Devin like idol trickery, that was like one or two tribals after that. And
yeah.
When I sent Eliza and Devin that message, like I was totally just like, I'm not even trying to make an alliance or anything, but that I just respect the hell out of that move. They like completely duped the hell out of me.
Dude, I love that so much. Like, I remember watching the show, and like you were literally like clapping like on the bench. You were just like enjoying the whole thing. You were just like all the rest of your tribe mates like freaking out. You're like just grinning like this is hilarious.
Well, I could have gone home that week, and like I didn't realize that like that was gonna being a possibility until like Sarah went home, and I was like, whoa, that like very easily could have been me. So I definitely wouldn't have been clapping after that at that point. But yeah, that was good. And then like we had a meeting one-on-one at some point, I think. And Devin, you can talk about this more if you want. But I don't remember exactly what sparked it during that conversation, but at some point, like we were just like, this could be like really good. Like we both like enjoyed talking to each other and like each other's company. And we're like, this could be a really fun alliance.
Yeah, I think for me it was like, you know, you see like the Wills or Bens or like Emily P's that were like playing the game really hard, and to the point where like sometimes it would like, you know, drive you crazy. And I just like saw Dylan as like someone who was just like, you know, playing the game to have fun and just like, you know, see how it goes. And it was something that I saw that would be like more of like a relationship that I would like be able to trust, rather than just like constantly going in circles with someone. And like at least there was some comfort level that I saw I would gain with Dylan. So but yeah, like there was like small things like when Dylan sent that text to Lisa and I, and like just small like I guess like informal connections that we like kind of like established over like the first few weeks, that it like eventually for some reason or the other made sense to kind of align together in like the later
Yeah.
weeks.
Also, something that didn't get showed, which we talked about on the other podcast, was your diagram the week that you're during the Rock Tribal week. Deven made this ridiculously large diagram in the Raw study room on the whiteboard about kind of like similar to how Andrew was talking about like the probabilities and like how it would work if this person flopped and this person flopped and what it would look like going forward. It was like a web almost, and it was really funny, and that like also spoke to Devin's character and like that he was like very strategically thinking about the game. So I respected that a lot too.
Yeah, actually, after that, Andrew and I were talking, and I was like starting to realize that was like a huge mistake because there was like at first like there was like a really low chance that you guys were actually going to flip like to us, and by like drawing it out, even if it like did make sense, like it definitely like showed you guys, or at least not even you guys, but even the rest of my tribe, that like how I was thinking. But yeah, that was like another thing.
Yeah, how would you guys describe your pre-merge strategy? Because I feel like you guys had similar ideas to kind of lay low in the beginning. Is that true? Like, what were you guys kind of thinking?
Yeah, I guess for me, I didn't have like, I know Will like changed, like went into the game like knowing exactly what he was like gonna, like what strategy he was kind of gonna follow. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew though that like I didn't want to like make like huge moves at the beginning of the game. Just watching Survivor, knowing that like that immediately can put a target on your back. But I didn't really know what that meant. Whether it meant like to lay low, almost to the point that some people didn't even realize that I was playing the game. But like it became apparent kind of early on when I saw like a lot of the people were playing pretty hard, that like there's definitely, and they were like targeting the people that were also playing hard, that like it made sense for me to like kind of lay low and let them kind of just like battle it out, and then like at some point I could come out of nowhere and like make that big move. And like for me, I don't think that big move ever really happened, just how like the season played out. But I guess you could argue like the biggest move I made was like to like align with Dylan. But yeah, that was kind of my thought process going into the game.
Mine was like yeah, it was like similar to Devin's, but I think I might have mentioned this on something. I watched maybe one season before, or I hadn't watched one, and then I watched one like the week of like leading up to Survivor. So like I was familiar with the show, but I didn't have a great understanding of what was going on. And so I did research on like past winners of actual Survivor, and like I noticed that like big targets and like big immunity challenge players and like physical threats were like, it wasn't common for them to make it to the end unless they won on like very specific immunity challenges, etc. And something that I read was that being like the second person, like still like knowing what's going on, like befriending somebody who is a bigger player and who seems to be more in charge, was like a better way to lay low as a potential like physical threat, and like show people that I wasn't going to be a threat during challenges. And the information was kind of like very obviously very specific to actual Survivor, where if like you think about it, it's a lot harder to make cross-tribe alliances pre-merge because you're not even close to each other at all. You're on an island. You're not necessarily living with the tribe. And so I completely missed that, like, that was like an opportunity, which you see like Brady and Ben doing like cross-tribe alliances so early on. And like obviously Tafiti Tormenta kind of became adopted, but that was like the foundation for that was like Brady making those moves. So I mean, it helped in my strategy way of laying low, but I also think that like the relationship building cross tribe alliances could have been like a better way to play college Survivor, because I mean there's a lot of more open communication than when you're on an island. So yeah, similar to what Devin said, I was just trying to like lay low and try to learn the game at the beginning, and try to adapt and like figure out my strategy as I went.
Like, yeah, because one of the things that I know like some people in the audience were saying is like we didn't see as much of both of you guys in the pre-merge. We definitely saw a lot more in the post-merge, which I think part of it like was kind of cool in that like we saw that like different players throughout the game kind of had different points where like they were kind of more directing what direction of the season. And I really like that for you guys. Like, it didn't happen right away, but there definitely was a solid point like about halfway through the game where we saw your alliance form, and like you guys really were the ones that were like kind of directing the strategy of the game. But yeah, I think that is like one of the things I was really interested in what I appreciate you guys talking about is like what was happening in the pre-merge, because like obviously I know you guys were doing stuff. It just wasn't as like, you know, out in the open as somebody like Will or Ben who were like doing all this crazy 20 steps ahead kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely. I was wondering about something that you mentioned at Final Tribal Council, where you kind of mentioned that when you're talking about your beginning strategy, and you said something like, you know, near the beginning, I realized that I went too hard, so I kind of like backed down a little bit. I was curious if you could like talk about like what you like, what things you were doing in the pre-merge where you decided to like back down. Like what kind of happened with that?
Yeah. So I think at the beginning, something that didn't really get shown in the first few episodes was my relationship with Andrew. And like it really started to develop the first week when we ended up kind of just ganging up on Richard and kind of pulling the other three, the two girls and Austin in. But it was like at first Richard like saw that I was kind of playing Andrew's side as well as like kind of like playing him in the sense that like he was like saying that Andrew was a little sketchy, and I was like kind of agreeing with him, but like I was like still trying to play out which side I really wanted to go with. But then once I was with Andrew after the three of us had met, it was like pretty clear that when Richard kind of called me out on that call that I wanted to side with Andrew. But like I definitely felt like there was a target on my back just because I had been talking to everyone week one, and I think at some point Austin had thrown my name out, and like it was week one, so like I after that week I was like a little nervous, just because I had like been talking to a good amount of people, and I didn't really know how the rest of the season was gonna go. And so like from then on I was just like, okay, I'm literally just gonna like kind of like be absent and like not respond to our group chats as much, or group messages as much, and kind of use Andrew as like a shield. But then obviously he got voted out in the Rocks tribal. So there were a few like at least conversations that happened the first few weeks that I felt like I was like kind of putting myself out there too much, and like I was giving out too much information, at least how I was talking and like how we were strategizing. So that was it. And then eventually like I like kind of laid low and I kind of let the other players kind of come out. I don't know what would have really happened if I like didn't lay low, but obviously I'm glad I did, because everyone else kind of like came out of their shells pretty quickly, and like you said, kind of controlled the direction of the game.
Well, I mean, I think that honestly, like in this season, it ended up being a strategy that worked really well for you, Dylan, because both of you, I feel like represented the season well in that you were people that kind of like sat back. And I remember at one point you were in a confessional talking about like everybody else is doing all this stuff. If we just sit back and they just like tell us everything, we'll have all the information from both of the sides. And I feel like the two of you are really able to kind of like take a step outside of all the craziness, and everybody else kind of like self-destructed. and like kind of like same thing you were talking about with your strategy, Dylan. Like you let other people kind of like take that target on their backs. And I feel like to an extent, like both of you, that strategy worked out well for both of you. So like I just think it's really interesting because it's like obviously like something that I think it's tougher to talk about at a final tribal where people don't really see as much of what you guys are doing until after they watch the season and they see all the videos. They're like, oh, like that's what they were doing. You know, it's definitely a harder game to defend.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was like one of like the biggest.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was like one of my biggest flaws was basically showing the jury what game I had played. So it's like a balancing game, you know, like laying low and managing your threat level while also like kind of like, you know, at least showing or demonstrating to the jury that you're actually playing the game. The latter half of that I definitely wasn't as successful in, but I think to your point that like a lot of these people came out firing was like I don't know. I don't think Dylan or I watched any of like the other College Survivor seasons before. And I think a lot of like the people who came out and had targets on their back throughout the season had watched previous seasons of like College Survivor. And because at that point, like season 1 wasn't out when we filmed. And I hadn't watched anything else, season 1 of Survivor Michigan, and I hadn't watched any other of the College Survivors. So I felt like a lot of the other players like had watched them and then like had known like this is who I want to be and this is how I'm gonna like play the game, and like came out and like started firing on all cylinders. And I just like had no idea what College Survivor was gonna be like. And so that may have also played into kind of just like wanting to lay low and just see how things played out.
Yeah. I also have a question because Elisa and I were talking about this the other day. Did you ever consider at a tribal council, like down the stretch, maybe at like final 5, 4, or like 3, mentioning our relationship, like getting ahead of like being the one to say that like we had this alliance to the jury like prior to final tribal council?
I really didn't, because there was multiple points in like even like the last few weeks that like if people knew we were like aligned,
Mm-hmm.
I could have easily, or you could have easily been voted out.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Like Erin, I think I don't know what week it was, but she had the immunity,
Mm-hmm.
and it was us two and Erin and Cassie. And at that point, I felt like if she knew that we were aligned, either you or I would have gone out, and then at some point, I feel like after that, I would have like been voted out. And so like I thought it was actually advantageous to keep it at least to a point where like I knew I would be in the final.
Yeah.
But looking back, you know, who knows? Like it could have influenced the jury so much so that I would have gotten maybe a few more votes at the final.
Yeah, because I was thinking, what you said makes sense. Because let's say it's like final 5 when Aaron had immunity, because maybe it would help you justify Will's vote and maybe get his vote if he had like a chance to like marinate on it for like a few days, rather than like kind of hearing it at final and tribal council and like being upset about like the whole alliance thing that you guys had. And
yeah,
but then I do like agree with you in the sense that all of a sudden Cassie's going to be upset with me. Erin's going to be upset that like she thought that she had an alliance with you and me, and there could be so much of a shock at that point where they want to go after one of us in that following week, and it could be weird, like a 2 versus 2 situation with rocks or some sort of challenge involved could completely change the course of the game at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was like, you know, at Final Tribal, I just assumed that like people like Will would have just like at least respected the fact that, you know, I was like I mean he didn't play an honest or loyal game, and like I didn't either, at least especially towards like a lot of my so-called alliance members that eventually were voted out. And I thought he would have at least respected, or at least more of the jury would have respected the fact that like, you know, I had also that aspect of my game.
Yeah. I also mentioned, sorry, you can go, Sam.
No, I was just gonna agree with that, and like, one of the things that like I was curious about was whether you considered like at the final three after you had won immunity and there's no danger of you and of like you anybody turning on you and Dylan, obviously, when you if like you had considered telling Aaron at that point like that you had the alliance to justify voting her off, because I don't know if I
Yeah, that's
fully
a good
understood
question.
how, because it did seem like she felt like you had really reason to be loyal to her, when I feel like you didn't really have that reason to be loyal to her because you guys hadn't really worked together the whole game. But at the same time, like she was still pretty bitter afterwards. So I was wondering if you like considered that as a strategy.
Yeah, looking back, that probably made a lot more sense. I think what was going through my head at that point was I don't want, like, it was more of like I want to come out at Final Tribal and
Have this like, yeah,
kind of surprise everyone, take everyone by surprise, and say that I played this game, having and people hadn't known, and then it would kind of like swing them
yeah,
last minute. But looking back, it definitely, like, if I told her that, um, it definitely wouldn't have made voting her out easier. Like, she still would have been like, okay, but you still made this promise to me,
Yeah.
etc. But she may have taken that back to the jury and said, like, this is the game Devin's been playing, and he, like, has had this relationship with Dylan. You have to give him credit for that. So who knows? But yeah, looking back, it probably made a little bit more sense to tell Aaron at
I
that
think
point.
that
yeah,
I think that she was gonna vote for whoever didn't vote her out at final three, because like I knew that she made this big old run, and like she was just like one step away from possibly winning, maybe against either of us, um, and I know that like maybe like the week or two before, like she asked me about like final two or whatever, and I was like, I'm not gonna like be like dishonest with you. I'm not gonna try to like put on a face and be like, I wouldn't bring Cassie. Like if I said that to you, you'd think that like I'm lying to you, that I would promise you final two when you've seen me work with Cassie the whole time. So like I thought that maybe like I'd lost her trust in me saying that, but I wanted to be like straight up with her about it. And so after you voted for her, I know that she was like upset that you had to be the one to vote her out. So I'm curious as like if I win that last immunity challenge, and even though I was like straight up with her about everything, if she would vote for you at the end because she would have been bitter at me for voting her out. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah. I was.
I yeah, go
No, go
ahead.
ahead, Devin.
No, I guess looking back on it, um, it does make sense that at least me explaining to Aaron that the relationship with Dylan was like established far earlier than my
Yeah.
relationship with her, and my whole intention was to go to the end with her or with him. So maybe she would have respected that, but honestly, at the time, it was just more so like I want to tell everyone at Final
Yeah.
Tribal, and it was more so like let's just get there, and hopefully people will respect it then.
That's a good point.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention was like that, like I think that given your guys' relationship at Final Five, you guys played it almost basically perfectly, I would say, as far as like you were two people entering the Final Five, and you were definitely the tightest two people of anybody else. So theoretically, you shouldn't have been able to make it to the final two, but you managed to like basically center your guys' selves in the middle of the game, where everyone kind of needed your votes, and also like didn't suspect you two of being in a partnership, which I feel like it was just crazy seeing you guys form this duo so early on the merge and make it all the way to the final two with nobody suspecting it the entire time, which like that also in my mind like definitely makes sense as to why like you, Devin, would want to like save it for like this big kind of like shocking moment at Final Tribal,
Right.
and hope that the shock like works out in a positive way rather than like ended up being more in like a negative way that like people like, Will was like, I'm living in the Matrix. He was like so overwhelmed by it. But it was like good narratively just seeing like the secret duo make it all the way to the end and nobody else knows until like final tribal.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And there were so many like subtle things that Dylan and I did, like subtle and not so subtle. Like even at like a lot of the tribals or even at the challenges, like we didn't really talk, like on purpose, just so that people didn't like suspect anything. But obviously we were communicating, virtually as well as, like in our like we would always like meet up in like these like low key raw study rooms where like no one would be able to like see us having a conversation. But like even like things like during the will vote where like I basically threw my vote just to like not show any allegiance to Dylan. But like small things like that like we did throughout the season that at least like confirmed that like no one would like at least find out or have any suspicion, which I have no idea how Cassie had any idea like at the very end. I think it may have like just been like a wild guess, but Dylan, do you have any insight on that?
I don't know, like, because I mean, obviously, seeing it on screen for the first time, I'd never even suspected that anyone was thinking that, and I didn't think I'd given Cassie any reason to, and part of it is like she might have had like some inclination, just like out of the blue, because of like how long like both you and I had been in the game, and like maybe the fact that we were trying to always shift the narrative away from our own names. So it was like part of the thing that like obviously you and I were doing, we're making sure that no one ever was thinking, okay, let's vote out Deven this week or let's vote out Dylan this week. And maybe I remember like not wanting to bring up your name, to give her any thought about wanting to vote you out, and maybe that sort of like rang true to her. But I also think part of it was Cassie, like that week, that was the week she went home. I think she was worried that she started like feeling the pressure a little bit that she might actually be going home. And so telling Aaron that you and I have a relationship kind of puts the target off of her back onto us. And it's like a part of her way to like shift Aaron's views a little bit to vote out one of us instead. And it also like she thought that it was going to be you this week, that week, and so it gives Aaron another reason to be like, okay, yeah, I can jump more on Deven going home that week than instead of Dylan.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like what week? I don't remember what week, but that was Final Four. And I remember Aaron coming to me and being like, "Oh, like," and she like said that you and Dylan have a relationship, and I like basically it was like in the episode I basically like pretended like I had no idea what she was talking
smart,
about,
because it could have ended right there if you were like, "Oh yeah, like she's right," like, because then what I would assume was going through your head is you're like, "Oh shit, like Dylan actually finally told someone." And then
exactly. And that's why I was actually really nervous at that tribal, because like I didn't know at that point if you were just going to be like, okay, like this is the end of I'm like happy going to the final two with either Aaron or Cassie, and if you were just like kind of like done with our relationship. So
Deven, did you consider trying to get Dylan out at Final Four and going with Cassie instead to the final two? Do you think that ever would have worked?
The issue was, the issue was, if it was like one of those like, stamina challenges that wasn't like at least somewhat physical, in the sense that like if it was literally just put your hand on this or whatever, like I knew I would be going against Aaron and I didn't know if I would beat Aaron. And if I got Dylan out at that point, I didn't know if, Aaron would take me or Cassie, because I know she would feel like she would have like a good chance against either of us. So if she won, like I wasn't certain that I was going to win, or like I was not certain at all that I was going to win, because I know Aaron would have probably won that challenge. I be confident that she would take me to the final.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also,
yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, Cassie also. I'm pretty sure it was common knowledge. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was common knowledge that Cassie said that she could beat Aaron at Final Tribal. I forget who she mentioned that to. Will? Was it Will? Do you remember?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
maybe
it was
I didn't know
Will.
that, but I think maybe maybe Will told you that at the time. So like, what's probably going through your head is like, if Cassie thinks that she can beat Aaron at Final Tribal, then like, why she might not be so inclined to take you at that point. She can like look at it and be like, who do I think I have a better chance of beating? And if she did think that like she could beat Aaron at Final Tribal, then she could take her at that point if she won that final immunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is like that was one aspect of my like thought process. The other aspect was like I had always set out to take Dylan to the end, and that was like kind of my strategy. And so by saying that at final and like at Final Tribal and like showing that I actually did that, I thought that would at least hold some merit as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, kind of along those lines, Deven. You end up winning that final immunity. I guess, like, yeah, talk a little bit about that. I know there's like a reward challenge that you won an advantage in the final immunity. I don't think it was shown in the episode.
Yeah.
That was
I don't even remember. What was it again?
You got hand warmers. I don't remember what the reward challenge was, but they gave you hand warmers.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think like the producers were more thinking like this could be am I going to get cold type challenge, but like really it was trying to keep like 1/80th of your foot on a piece of metal.
Yeah, it was I thought it was a good challenge. It's just I don't know, like I think I don't know how long I could have stayed up there, but it definitely made it easier once Aaron dropped, knowing that it was either Dylan or I, that I would have a good chance of being in the final. And I honestly don't know how long I would have stayed, but I think it was literally like Aaron's shoes were just like they just didn't have as much traction, which kind of like screwed her over. But I could definitely see that having been gone like for hours if Aaron didn't drop.
I had like the will to stay on for like as long as possible, but my legs were starting to shake and my like my thighs were starting to cripple on me, and I couldn't keep it going anymore.
Oh man, how did it feel, Deven, to win that final immunity, get your first immunity this season, and know you're guaranteed in the final two?
Yeah, I mean, like I've always like at the start of the season I always wanted to win at least one immunity, and like I had no idea that it would be the last one, but I guess it was like the most important one, at least for me, just because the other I guess it probably would have been a little bit more important if I won it earlier, where I could have at least controlled some of the vote, which I want to talk about the Eliza vote a little bit later, but it was really nice to have secured my spot and like start thinking about what I wanted to say and like things like that. But I definitely, at least just for my own like sanity, I would definitely wanted to like have one at least, and I'm happy that it happened eventually.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the Eliza thing. So, because I remember Final Tribal, you said that you knew about it, and you and Dylan kind of had a little argument about that, and like, what was the whole deal with that? What was the situation?
Yeah. So what I meant by that was I didn't necessarily know Eliza was going to go home. I knew there was a chance that someone on my side would go home because Aaron had the idol, and I didn't know exactly if she was going to like play it. But in my mind, it was like, okay, it's either Brady going home because like Dylan was going to steal, and if Brady goes home, I'm fine. If Aaron plays the idol, that's also fine because I know my name. I don't have a large of a target enough to be voted out, and it was either going to be probably Eliza or maybe Will, I felt like was going to go home. And either way, like it was fine because like they weren't in my larger plans. That was my thought process going into it. Looking back now, like I realized that tribal literally shifted the next few, or like I guess the rest of the game, to a point where like Dylan was always in the numbers and I had to rely a lot more on Dylan going forward and kind of like making sure that I was in his long-term plans, versus if Brady went home, like my side would have had the majority and Dylan would have been in a situation where he would have had to rely a lot on me and like his relationship with me to get him to the final. So looking back, it probably made sense. It probably made sense for me to like at least, you know, use the knowledge of Aaron's idol and like I don't know what exactly we would have done differently, but use that to my advantage to try to get that person to be secured, to be like someone on Dylan's side to get out, so that I could kind of control
Yeah,
going
it's
forward.
yeah, he pretty much hit that right in the head. I am curious like what like how that would have went. But I remember talking to you about like we were like we hope Aaron doesn't play it, like that's like our last resort option. We're like we really don't think she's gonna do it. But like both of us will still be around if it does happen. We just really hope that it doesn't. And of course that's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is like it was also going through my head like eventually like I'm gonna have to vote out Eliza or Will. Like there's no way I can go to the final with them. And it was like this could be a way for me to
Right.
like not have to do it myself, like in terms of like showing my like allegiance to Dylan, and like they would still go home, and I wouldn't have to like kind of like I guess piss them off or show I guess like show them that like I kind of like
Yeah.
blindsided them. So that was kind of what was going through my head.
Yeah. Honestly, like that's the thing is it's a bummer that the jury I think didn't completely understand what you were trying to say in some of those like situations. Like in this situation that you were trying to explain. I think there were a lot of cases where the jury like that's what you were trying to say and the jury just kind of like took it wrong, you know? And yeah, I feel like that's one of the tough things for both of you. You know, you guys play games where you had a lot of secret stuff that like you know because it was your strategy, you couldn't kind of like show your cards, and then trying to like explain so many things at the final tribal is just like there's not enough time for
Right.
that, you know. Um, that was the part that's what makes it so hard at the final tribal where you have to try to explain your whole game in a way that makes sense to every person and like um yeah, I was that Eliza thing was definitely yeah, because like I think it was Will that was asking that question, right? And
Yeah, which is the right question. Like, I'm glad he asked that question. I guess my answer was like too blunt, or yeah, whatever for him, and it wasn't convincing enough to
yeah,
vote for
yeah,
me.
exactly. Like yeah, it's tough.
Did
Have long.
But like this goes to the point where like I felt like I played uh, a very strong game in like a
Hmm.
lot of aspects, and the one aspect that you know like just how the game is structured, jury management, and like how much power that really holds at the end, like that was like my weakest part of my game, and it clearly showed at the end. I just thought I would be able to at least recover in that aspect by like explaining everything and like having people understand where I was coming from. But yeah, clearly it just like
Well, it
didn't
still
pan
was
out
close though. Like
at
it,
final tribal.
and I think I didn't realize how many people were still on the edge going into it. I think like they said like Ben and Emily P with Will. What I think like was like more set on you, and then obviously the question like you mentioned, but like it could have been even one. It could have been like another one. The fact that like it came down to just like a few people. Like you still completely had Savu Savu. I still had Tafiti, and it was just talking to the Tormenta, who really just didn't understand the games that
Yeah,
we had at the
exactly.
time.
Hmm. And also, like, Devin, like, don't get me wrong, like, you played an excellent game. Like, one of the things that I was thinking throughout, like, the editing process and watching the season is, like, for both of you guys, it was just so impressive seeing the amount of stuff you guys were doing behind the scenes that a lot of people didn't know about. And I love the story of seeing all these, like, kind of crazy, wacky, really, really big characters in the game. They all kind of flame out in different ways. And you guys both had this steady strategy where you guys both, like, brought different things to the table, but it really worked in your alliance. And, like, yeah, I feel like one of the things I love about the season is you get a final two where both of you guys, I think, had a really strong case to win. You both played similar games, but you also had, like, really key differences where Dylan, I think, had you had made a little bit more kind of like flashy moves, and you had, like, that really strong social game. And then Devin had you would, like, plan some really big, like, strategic moves, and you were, like, really, really good at analyzing what was kind of going on in the game and having a good read on the game. And I think that, like, putting those two things together, like, made you guys basically unstoppable. So I love that it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I love going to the final tribal council, and, like, honestly, it would have been satisfied with either of you winning the season. I think that, like, that's how it came out down to, where there were a few votes that I think that both of you had a fair shot at getting. So I think that's one of the things I loved about this season is that, like, it ends really well, and that we have two people in the final two that, like, you guys have directed a lot of the game. I think you represented the season well, and you both had really strong cases for winning.
Yeah. Also, yeah. I mean, first, I completely agree with what you mentioned, and another thing I wanted to bring up was, and also kind of touching on, like, Devin's strategy and, like, the ability for us to, like, work together is that's kind of uncommon, is that, like, we could think like 3 to 4 weeks ahead. We could sit down and have a meeting and be like, okay, these are all the people that we think are targets. If this person wins, if this person wins immunity, we can go with this option. If this person wins immunity, we can go with this option. And we had, like, a very strategic layout, like, going into it. And it was like, okay, like, Aaron's been doing, like, a good job. Like, let's really try to get Aaron out right now. And it's like, okay, if Aaron wins immunity, we'll have this other plan in place and we'll go with it. It allowed, like each week to go, like, pretty smoothly and, like, comfortably. So it's like, we didn't really have a lot of reason to, like, be panicking, because we had, like, these strategies laid out for a while. And it was like, okay, Brady's a big threat. Let's try to figure out how to get Brady out. And it was like, okay, Brady's losing this, or he won this challenge. He's still here for this one. Then we can go this route, and we still know that, like, the next week, Devin and I will be on the same page. And it also helped that, like, we were willing to go, like, back and forth with our own alliances, because we were playing in two completely different alliances, and both of us, in order to keep the integrity of our relationship, were willing to go, like, we can take somebody from my alliance this week, we can take somebody from your alliance this week. And so it's not like we ever felt uncomfortable with one of us having too many people in our other alliance, to the point where, like, we feel like the integrity of our 2-person alliance could be broken.
Yeah, and the other thing was, like, there was a mutual understanding that, you know, like Dylan couldn't take Brady to the end, or I couldn't take, you know, Eliza or Will to the end, and there was, like, a mutual understanding that, like,
yeah,
we kind of needed to go together, or at least, you know, either us two and Cassie, to actually, you know, like, beat at least each other. So that was like another thing where, like, it's like, okay, like, yeah, it's fine if Eliza or Brady goes home, because, like, eventually it's going to need to happen, because I know I can't stay, or I can't stay at the final with them. The other thing was, like, by Dylan being on the other side of, like, the merge alliances, and, like, me being on another side, like, we literally had, like, almost all the information in the game. And the only thing, like, I didn't really know for sure was, like, the Cassie and Aaron, like, girl power alliance, which I guess ended up not really being, like, as big of a thing that, like, I thought. But, like, that was really the only thing that, like, I don't think Dylan or I had a real, like, grasp of. And other than that, like, we kind of knew exactly what was going on in the game, and, like, who was, like, talking to who, and, like, what people were thinking. So that kind of, like, made it at least somewhat easy as we were looking out in the next few weeks, like, what made sense to get our games further.
Yeah, no, I think that I just like love seeing that strategy play out where there's this war going on with two sides, but like secretly, you guys are both just like plotting and knowing everything and like kind of being just behind the scenes. Like I think that it was just like really awesome and unexpected and fun to watch. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think the season turned out really well, and it captured like almost all of like the major themes and like personalities, and I thought it was like a good mix of like entertainment as well
Yeah,
as
and
strategy.
another
So
thing I
I'm
wanted to
really
bring
happy
up,
with
because
how
we
it
kind of
turned out.
talked about this on the other podcast from Wednesdays, like sometimes like tensions get high, and like there's like a certain like a perspective of everybody playing the game from a fan standpoint, and I wanted to like reiterate that like everyone's good now. Like there's no beef, and some of the portrayals of the people from like a character's and a personality point of view like doesn't hold true entirely in person, and everyone is like really good. We've had like a lot of get-togethers since then, and even people that like Devin's been graduated, and even with like Corona, everyone still communicates a lot, and so that's like a nice thing. Like it's a very tight knit community still, even after everything that's gone on throughout the games and throughout 3 different seasons. It's like overall just a great community.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Dylan. Yeah, I definitely agree and want to like reiterate like as well like that as someone on like the editing side of things, we obviously like you have so much footage, you have an hour, hours of footage, and we're cutting it down to like just a few
Mm-hmm.
seconds showing, the most mean or the most intense or most crazy thing
Yeah.
somebody says to kind of like build everybody up as the craziest characters
Yep.
as they can be. And like when you look at the whole season as a whole, it's like, you try to accurately depict what happened the best as you can, but you're limited by the amount of footage you have. Some people put in less than others. You're limited by just like every episode can't be 10 hours long. There's a lot of stuff that ends up getting left out. And, you try to get the story as perfect as you can, but there's obviously like, we're editing it so that it's characters in a TV
Right.
show,
Yeah.
not showing these are who these
And
people
that's why
are. You
sort
know what
of
I
like
mean?
Survivor Michigan has been so like popular, and like with the Survivor, like college Survivor community, is the producers do a fantastic job of extracting like the greatest amount of entertainment from all the footage that they've been able to capture. And I mean, like everyone has pretty much said this already, but all of the players like appreciate like the amount of time and effort all the producers put in to like make such a great show. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean
100%.
it's a
Yeah.
big effort by a lot of people, and it would have not have been possible without you guys coming to play. And I think that was one of the things I loved about this season is that everyone there like really wanted to play, and everyone knew different amounts of things about the game, but it's like everybody came there to play, which which is great. Kind of along those lines, like I want to hear from both of you, like what was your favorite moment of the season,
Oh, that's tough.
or one of your favorite moments?
That is tough.
Um, Mine, I don't know. There's a lot of great moments. I never thought like personally that I could like stack solo cups into a pyramid with my feet. So that was like something really cool that I never knew that I could do for myself before. I think like my peak one was um when it was the Rock Tribal, and Andrew was going to vote, and he yelled like, "Let's go to fucking Rocks," and then like goes to Rocks and then like pulls the wrong one. Like in that moment, like when he yelled that, like I was laughing to myself, and like the irony behind it is so funny. And like I mean, Andrew and I are good friends still, whatever, and so I like to joke with him about that stuff. But I thought that was such a funny moment.
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, I just love the intensity
Oh
that comes
yeah,
out of
yeah.
playing it. Like you just get in that hyper competitive atmosphere. It just feels like you're in the middle of like a sports game or,
Right,
playing a game of
yeah.
football or basketball or something where it's just like, you're there, like you have the adrenaline in, like everyone wants to win. I mean, yeah, and it makes all the emotions just so
Yeah,
much more
exactly.
intense, but like the
Yeah,
highs
it's
after.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. Along those lines, Dylan, I mean, another great moment for you was obviously winning the season.
Yeah, of course.
So talk a little bit about that. Like, what were your thoughts on winning, and like what did it feel like, and talk
Yeah,
about that whole thing.
obviously that felt good. I mean, I guess I can say like that could be like my favorite part of the season. But I mean, that's just kind of that's a pretty blunt answer. But obviously,
Yeah.
going into it, I mean, like not watching a whole lot of Survivor, but like really like loving playing the game as it went along and like understanding how it was, and like it was just like realizing it's like one of the biggest strategy games. So to be able to come out on top after like have like participating in a great strategy game where a lot of people were playing extremely well throughout the season, made it feel really good. The biggest thing was just like there's a lot of time and effort put into it. So it was like rewarding to have that amount of time and effort pay off. I know my parents were like, "Why are you like doing this Survivor that's almost like a 4 credit class on top of school?" And like I think now after like 2 years and then finally like it comes out and they have watched the whole thing, it's very rewarding and like they understand like how fun and like strategic it was. It's also something to talk about in interviews too. I mean, it's very easy to talk about 100-day season of Survivor that I was able to participate in, and obviously like it was really interesting to navigate it with Deven and going week to week and like feeling like you have some sort of control over the game, and also like having that dramatic like exposure of it finally at Final Tribal Council was really rewarding too. That like after he and I doing a really good job at keeping it bottled up for so long, it's like a secret that you wanted to finally like let loose and like take a load off or take a weight, like have a weight off your shoulders.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I felt like answering the questions like it was going to be very close. Like obviously it still was. So and I knew that I didn't know going into it that I would going into Final Tribal Council that like I had 100% shot. I knew it was going to be very close. I knew Deven had played a good game. So that made it rewarding too, but also just like the fact that like he and I were to make it there together after like what you mentioned, like so many weeks of like trying to hold like power in the game or gain information or whatever. It was nice.
Yeah. Man, yeah, I mean a well-deserved
I
win,
appreciate it.
buddy. It was fun to it was definitely fun to see you go from like beginning of the game, you have all these sound bites like
Yeah,
that was
I didn't
something,
expect you guys to
and
use it
you're
like that.
wearing
Actually, that's not at all what I thought was gonna. I thought it like how you pieced it together at the end of the episode is more like what I thought. But then when you guys just put the whole video in there, me be like, okay, here, like you can use these bites and just spit them all off. I was like, I thought it was hilarious, but I had no idea that's how it was gonna get used.
Oh man, I was so glad. I mean, because that was like one of the first videos you made, and it wasn't until like week
Yeah,
3 or 4 or
like
something.
the people
So it was
watching know, like I'm not in a lot of the pre-merge, and that's like not even specifically like producer strategies. I didn't really give them anything to work with at the beginning. I wasn't really recording enough videos, and so the sound bites was a funny way to make sure there's like, yeah, I'm still playing the game. I'm still here.
The funniest part
Oh
about
man,
that was my mom, while we were watching together, she was always like after the first couple episodes, she was always like, wow, Dylan's always wearing the same thing. And like she didn't realize that it was like the same one,
Oh
like
my
literally the
gosh.
same clip over and over. And I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? And it was just funny. Like, I don't know.
That's funny. I mean, if anything, Dylan, you're wearing a different hat like every single scene, the whole entire series.
I was
It
going
was
for
hilarious.
that. Aaron was doing a similar hat game too. It was almost like, I think we mentioned it to each other during the season about how we had like not even like competitive, but like we were almost like not bad competitive, but like we were competing to like who was wearing hats more, who was switching off hats and stuff. So that was funny.
The hat game was
Yeah.
so funny, dude. Like I don't even know how many different hats you wore. It had to have been at
Yeah,
least
probably.
like 10.
I have like 40 in my closet.
The other thing that was
man.
iconic was
That's amazing.
was your flannel, the blue flannel.
Oh yeah, I wore that so much sophomore year. When I go back into my Snapchat memories from sophomore year, I'm always wearing that shirt. That's a $10 shirt that my roommate's mom got us from Costco. So like it's literally like not even like a very impressive shirt, but it's just dynamic. It's a good Michigan like fall flannel.
I love it. Yeah. Dude, but like sometimes it would be like 20 degrees outside and like I would be like people would bring jackets and you would just be wearing like a hoodie and then like the flannel
The
over
flannel
and I would
over it,
just be like, what is going on?
So classic. You know, Dylan's got his solid fashion style. He has it very defined and it's recognizable. It's just classic 2018
Yeah, exactly.
fall Dylan right there.
My friends have said the exact same thing.
That's so great. Yeah, Devin, we're talking about favorite moments from the season. What were some of your favorite memories?
Damn, there's so many. There's just like a lot of, I'm trying to pinpoint one, but there was a lot of times throughout the season where I felt like I had one ally and and like sometimes this like especially during like when Dylan and Will and I would talk, like Will had no idea that Dylan and I were aligned, and we would go into these conversations like knowing exactly what we were going to say to Will, and it would just be like funny to me how we would frame certain things like depending on how we like we're going to approach the conversation. And it was just funny, like a lot of times Dylan and I and Will would talk and like Dylan and I would just bounce things off of each other, and Will would be like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Will would be like, "We all need to align and like talk," and then like before me and Dylan would be like, "Okay, what do you want to say? Like, how should we frame all of this?" And like we would go into the conversation knowing exactly what we wanted to say to Will to like, because like I would be aligned with Will and like very closely, and like Will would be like, "Okay, if Dylan says this, like I think we're good." And stuff. And like then I would literally talk to Dylan before or whatever and be like, yo, like he wants to hear this and like he's really like tripping about this and like he just wants to make sure you're like all in line with this. And then like I would literally tell Dylan that, and then like Will would hear what he would want to hear, and like it would just be like a bad situation, but like it was just like us being like a little bit more aligned than like with Will, and stuff like that like didn't get captured. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'd say like one of my favorite Devin moments of the whole season was that tribal council where Sarah went home, where you cracked the PBR after like giving this whole big story about like this fake advantage that Austin had given to you. That was just so great. That whole entire tribal was one of my favorite tribals.
Which was so hard because I was like, trying to like be like casual, low key, and like sipping a beer, but like inside I was freaking the fuck out because like I didn't know if they were gonna vote for me or they were gonna buy it. It was just like a weird situation I was in where like I didn't know, like, or like I needed to like like look calm to like play it off, but it also was like very nerve-wracking.
Wait, wasn't it true that like you didn't know Eliza had an actual one at the time, right? So it still was right?
Yeah, exactly. And like she didn't tell me that until right before we voted.
Right.
And that was like another thing that I was just like, holy fuck, like I don't know what's gonna happen. And then she was like, should I play it for you? Should I play it for you? And like I was like, do whatever you want. Like I don't know what the right move is. But I guess she just like I'm glad she played it for herself, because I probably wouldn't have gotten as far as I did without her towards the middle of the game.
Man, yeah, that whole tribal was just crazy, and how you like turned to like Kevin or somebody, you're like, oh yeah, like you filmed the whole thing. Are you allowed to show them? And then like you already knew
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
gonna say like no, but you're just trying to like that whole pitch. Dude, I think that me and you I had a confessional with you right before that tribal council, and we were like in Ross or something. And I remember you were like explaining this whole plan. I was just like thinking like
Yeah,
there's no way
yeah.
this is gonna work. Like this is so I was just like thinking like I really hope this does. And I was just like, man, Devin and Elise are goners. I was thinking like this is too bad. Like I was like this crazy scheme. And it worked like perfectly. And I remember all production was just like that was crazy. We were just taken aback because we were like it seemed like such a Hail Mary. And the fact that it worked out so perfectly was just like
I
it
think
was
Yeah.
I definitely
incredible.
acted unintentionally as like an indirect member of their alliance that week, because I was like the first one to like evaluate the paper that you and Eliza had gotten together and like look at the idols. And I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
like Brady was like very like, I doubt that this is real. Like Brady's like, I don't really know about this. He's like, there's no way like they both have an immunity idol, blah, blah, blah. And I think the fact it helped so much that I was sitting there and I was like, like I just read this and it looks really real. And I'm like, and then anytime Brady's like, well, okay, well, we could do this. And I was like, but what if like it actually is true? Like we have to navigate this as maybe it's a possibility. And it was just putting so much doubt into like my tribe's like mind that like, okay, maybe they are real. Like maybe this is true. Like what, like how, maybe they got one from somebody else. Like this is crazy. And
Yeah.
I also didn't understand like you guys playing it before the votes or whatever. I like didn't know that like that was even allowed. And so I was like, what the hell is going on? Like I was just so
Yeah.
confused. I was so confused.
Yeah. I honestly, I didn't know if it was gonna work or not, but and that was like the besides that and week 4, or sorry, the final 4. Those were like the 2 weeks where I really was like I could be going home. Um, and I was very, very, very nervous that week.
Yeah.
But I think low key, like I think Elise and I were debating whether we should put votes on you or Sarah, and that we could have easily put the reasoning at the end, I think, for putting votes on Sarah was she seemed as if she was like more willing to like strategize and like talk to people, and like we didn't necessarily want someone like that who was like, you know, as social, or as it seemed at least at first, willing to like, you know, develop relationships with a bunch of people. And we don't want someone like that like to like at least like be in the game.
Yeah.
And but like if we ended up voting you, like who knows what had happened, you know, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I guess that kind of like makes me feel better about playing more low key in the beginning then, because
Yeah, but it was just exactly, but it was just like such a like an off like reason for us to like
right,
vote Sarah,
like, yeah.
that, you know, who you know, like who knows what could have happened.
Yeah, it would be crazy.
Yeah, man, I just love that like we kind of saw the seeds of you guys' relationship so early, even with like in that episode, like Devin, you were just like, yeah, like Elisa kind of wants Dylan, but I kind of rather
Yeah,
have
exactly.
Sarah. And then like Dylan, your confessional, like, yeah, we can get rid of everybody except for Devin. Everyone on side by side except for Devin. I think we'll be all right. Like you both kind of like wanted to work with each other, like so
And like it
it was
may
just
have
like
been like
great seeing
that
it
small
grow.
little like interaction we
Like
had at like the
subconscious,
Rocks
yeah.
tribal. Yeah, and subconscious, like just like at least just like acknowledging each other, and small things like that like probably like influenced our reasoning somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, so kind of getting near the end here. I have a final question that I always ask everybody, and well, I'll get to that final question unless either of you have any more things you want to touch on from your games.
I think we've done a pretty good job discussing most of it. Let's see. I know like one of the things that like I was trying to do, I want like after merge, to make sure like I didn't seem like a challenge threat, but like part of it was like I wasn't doing like that great in challenges anyway. But my mindset going into a challenge was, if I lose, I feel like I have even less of a target on my back. And if I start feeling like this is going to be a difficult challenge where I can't make it out on top, then it's fine for me to not try that hard in the challenge. But at the same time, I knew that like if I didn't win like a single challenge, like it might not look that good to the jury. So that was kind of like something that I juggled like early on in the merge. That wasn't necessarily the case like near the end. I'd say like after Brady and I won that balloon challenge, was like I was trying my hardest in all of those challenges after that. But post that or pre that, I didn't want to make sure like look like a challenge there early on, and I know that like I remember specifically like a blue van showed up at like one of the candy memorization challenge, and when I was starting to do it, like as I'm writing it down, I'm like, okay, I can't really exactly remember the whole selection of candy that was just put out. Might as well just like turn this into like a funny thing and like blame it on the blue car for like messing me up or whatever. And kind of people took it as like a comical thing, and it also was like, okay, this guy like didn't take the challenge super seriously, like maybe he's not that big of a challenge threat at all.
Yeah. I definitely thought it was like a really good part of your game, and that you kind of like try to play yourself off as like being kind of goofy and not thinking as hard of about the game as you actually were. Like I know that like kind of near the beginning, like Chloe and Brady were talking in a video, and I remember, and Chloe said something like he's not just a dumb frat boy, like he knows more than he's letting on. And I feel like it's like definitely like true, like you're kind of playing up this persona, like like I'm just joking around, like I don't really know what's going on, but like you're thinking a lot more about it than like
Yeah, I
people
think
really
like I
realize, I
was still
think.
thinking about stuff at the beginning, but like I really didn't entirely know exactly what was going on at the beginning. So it was kind of like funny, and like I remember like the scene after that was like me like doing something goofy or something like that. So it was just like it really was like a funny two scenes back to back. But yeah, also like a funny tidbit, I told like my tribe and like Brady that like I hadn't watched Survivor before, and besides like one season, and then they started talking about like Pearl Islands for some reason, and like that was the one season I like watched right prior to the show, and so like I knew very specific details about it that I could bring up in conversation. And so I remember Brady like in a confessional after that was like, wait a second, like Dylan definitely was just lying to us. I bet he's like a huge like Survivor nerd, like, and that was literally just super circumstantial that like I knew how to answer like exactly what they were talking about because I just watched it like a week prior. Yeah.
It's so funny. Yeah, they're like getting a yeah. I think that's what it was in reference to. They're like, yeah, like we were talking about like
Yeah.
Sandra and blah 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 on Pearl Islands, and Dylan knew exactly what we were talking about.
It was literally just a
Yeah.
coincidence.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I think it was just fun seeing like, throughout the season, like your character kind of evolves from like kind of this like
Yeah.
comic relief like to someone that's like seriously like seriously contender to win the game and like actually knows what's going on. But even though like the rest of the people in the game aren't really as aware of that, so it's definitely like a good, fun like kind of arc to watch. All right, so I guess for both of you, um, what lessons did you learn from playing this? Like just like what after leaving Survivor Michigan and playing it and all that, the whole season 3 experience, like what do you take away from it all?
Damn, Sam, that's a deep question.
Deven, do you want to go first?
I ask every single person in the season this question, so I always love seeing what different things people say?
I think like first, just Survivor Michigan in general. A lot of my extracurricular activities were either like career focused or like I guess like in terms of like the fraternity, like just like socially focused. And I thought that like Survivor Michigan like was like at least Survivor in general, I guess, is just like a good combination of like I feel like a lot of things in terms of like, you are socializing while also like thinking, while also like like putting a lot of time into something like and being competitive. And that was like something that I like was like is like the most unique thing I did in college. Something that like when people ask me, what is like something interesting that you did in college, or even like, like just recently, like as I was like giving my like instruction or like my introductions for like my job, like people were just like, tell us something that was unique. And I always bring up Survivor Michigan because it is like, a unique experience to like play this game and have it, videotaped and produced and published on YouTube is like just like an incredible opportunity. And I don't know, I'd like to take this opportunity to really thank all of the producers and everyone behind the scenes, because you guys put in like countless hours into these seasons, and all of the airtime, like there is no airtime that goes to them. And it may like at the very end, like, say produced by Ian or whoever, storyboard by like Sam. But like you guys put in so many hours for us to kind of reap the benefits, and just appreciate all your guys' time and effort. It definitely doesn't go unnoticed, at least to the contestants.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, Deven pretty much hit everything home. So, I mean, wait, Sam, do you want to respond first, or should I answer?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'll just say like, yeah, really appreciate that, Devin. I mean, as someone that helped produce it, I just want to say like to you, to both of you, like, this season wouldn't have been possible without you guys actually coming to play. So I'm just like, you know, as somebody that's been working behind the scenes, there's a lot of people, and definitely appreciate the recognition. And it is really like, wanting you guys to have your chance to get your story told out there in YouTube. Like, you guys were the ones that put in all the effort in the game, so I'm glad you guys get to get recognized there in YouTube for it. So thanks for making the season what it was.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. What I've learned about it is Survivor's addicting, but it's also like can be very stressful, it can be very tense. It's not always easy to play and like deal with like the games and stuff, but there's a reason like everyone watches, and why the community is so strong is everybody's enjoyed and played the game, and they've gone through it. The producers have seen the play and find it entertaining, and kind of like Devin mentioned, it's kind of like the ultimate strategy game, and it's fun to put your mind at work, put your body at work, and put your relationships to work, and kind of like test yourself and see what you can do. It's a good way to like learn about like your own capabilities that sometimes you don't see, and like don't realize like your potential. And I learned that you can get a lot of friends from playing Survivor, and a lot of you can get like strong relationships from playing. You can really expand and like meet a variety of different people, and so I've learned that like how to like go about like building relationships in different ways, and strategically thinking about things in life differently. It's been, and I think Devin can attest to it too. It's like, especially for like a business major, like business questions, and practicing for recruiting, for doing like strategy or consulting and stuff. I found that like my mind has kind of been morphed in like a different way after playing Survivor, and it's like easier to think about like different strategies, like thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, thinking about like what is this competitor trying to think about, and there's ways to apply the game to a lot more than just the game itself. But all in all, it was like a good fun time playing, and it was nice like meeting everybody and like joining like the community as a whole.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dylan. Like the way that Survivor makes you, or like forces you to think, is like, what are other people thinking? Like, what is their perspective? And that is very applicable to like other parts of your life, and something that like you're never really taught. And I think it just happens with experience. And I think Survivor is like a great way for you to really develop that perspective. And like, I think naturally going forward, you just kind of like think that way, or at least it comes more naturally in the future. So that's something that like I think subconsciously is affecting me even now. So
yeah, awesome.
Thanks for hosting, Sam. Appreciate
That's
it.
Great.
Yeah, really appreciate
thanks
it.
a ton, guys, for coming on. Yeah, sorry Jack could not come and Sarah had to leave, but definitely great hearing from you guys, getting to catch up. So best of luck with the rest of your senior year, Dylan. The rest of living it out at Cooper's old house.
Yeah, gosh.
And
we're holding it up. We're like, even though we can't have crazy parties, we're still acting the same.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, guys. Good talking.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right. Bye. All right, so great to hear from Dylan and Deven. And now here we are with one more episode of Keep Your Torch Lit Season 3. Part 3 is coming out next. In that episode, Jack, Sarah, and I will break down our thoughts on the finale, and we will give the rankings for the final 5. So you don't want to miss it. Tune in to the last episode. Thanks for listening.